On Saturday afternoon, he was standing on a ladder, fixing the curtains. Outlined his strong, muscular back. I steadied the base of the ladder, and my gaze inadvertently swept over the sharply defined crease of his pants. The worries he confessed to me the night before, his face flushed with embarrassment, now took on a vividly clear shape. The air suddenly grew warmer, and even our breaths felt thick and sticky. Yunshu, am I really like some kind of monster? Every girl I've ever met says I am just intimidating, scary, unbearable. One buddy even ran away crying. Late at night of the blue, my old friend of 30 years showed up. Cheng Yu, in his early 30s, came to see me, head hung low as he sat on the sofa and laid bare his huge dilemma, the blunt, unvarnished reason for their breakup. I almost choked on the beer I just taken a sip of. He stood there towering over me with his exaggerated massive physique, almost 190 centimeters tall, his muscles bulging so tightly they seemed ready to burst. And here was this man, a man who usually made me laugh whenever he complained about being too big, confessing that he couldn't help himself. At his sheer size scared women away. Normally, I'd just pat him on the shoulder and laugh it off, calling his worries nonsense. But ever since my husband left, that solid dam inside me, the deep-seated longing I'd been suppressing for years, had been suddenly stirred into restless agitation by just a few of his words. How much like a wild beast does he have to be before a woman can't take it anymore and turns away sobbing? My gaze kept drifting involuntarily toward his sturdy thighs, his thick, powerful arms. I meant to comfort the wounded beast, but instead, I found myself stepping deeper into the jaws of the predator. This is the record of my secret choice. Berambolatishiously, the sharp ever pierced through the eerily silent living room. On a Saturday afternoon, someone who had just the night before laid bare his sides-related anxieties and seemed utterly deflated in front of me fixed the broken curtain from my massage chair. Cheer himself up a bit, so he took over the entire living room. Perched atop a ladder, he was busy working away, and I stood below, holding it steady for him. As soon as he called out to me, my breath caught in my throat. Even though the air conditioner was running, the room felt suffocatingly hot, filled with the masculine heat he radiated. Shockingly muscular lines of his back. Standing beneath the ladder, supporting his legs, my gaze inadvertently rose toward the light fixture above. And then, he'd been standing on tiptoe to brace himself against the heavy curtain rod. His jeans surged taut, as if they might rip open at any moment. Right there, right in the center of that tightly pulled fabric, the enormous bulge he confessed about so shyly the night before his uncontrollable desire was now vehemently, unapologetically revealed. Taking shape in an instant, my breath hitched. The screams of those young girls, crying out that they couldn't take it anymore and fleeing in terror, echoed faintly in my ears like a ghostly phantom. My rational mind told me to look away, but my eyes felt glued to the scene, stubbornly fixed on that overpowering presence. Each time he pushed upward with all his might to raise the heavy curtains, the veins in his thick forearms stood out starkly. Berambolatishiously, were to bear down on me entirely, and yet, strangely enough, instead of feeling fear, a sudden cramp gripped my lower abdomen, sending countless goosebumps racing up my spine. Step aside, watch out. Before I could even snap out of my daze, he'd already leapt down from the narrow ladder, landing with a thud. His massive frame barely squeezed through the narrow gap between the sofa cushions, and as soon as his feet hit the floor, his heavy, scorching body brushed against the edge of my thin skirt, sliding along the curve of my hips as if deliberately brushing against me, leaving a searing mark. A soft gasp escaped my lips. It was just a fleeting second of friction, yet the distinct texture and blistering heat that seeped through the fabric shattered every shred of rational thought in my mind in an instant. 5 years had passed since my husband left, and my body as a woman had become utterly parched, like a desert. But this single moment of contact, it felt as though the deepest, unleashing a torrent of scorching heat. "Auntie, are you okay?" He stepped off the ladder and casually yanked open the heavy curtains with a sharp tug. With a loud click, the blinding sunlight was completely blocked out, and the spacious living room instantly transformed into a pitch-black chamber, sealed tight and devoid of any light. Cheng Yu, oblivious to everything, cautiously approached in the darkness, wrapping his arms around my slender shoulders. All I could do was bury my burning face even deeper, my mind going utterly blank, my legs trembling weakly, because deep inside me, the sticky hot tears that had been drying up for 5 long years were now soaked through and flooding my body, so fiery it almost suffocated me. In that instant, I forgot even how to respond. Staring up at his face, no longer the innocent smile I once knew, deep within his eyes burned the primal instinct of a predator, one who did learn it to bear the dangers of men. In the darkening living room, our gazes locked in a brief, intense stare, sharp cracks straining to break free. His gaze seemed utterly indifferent to titles or formalities. Instead, she saw me plainly as a woman, stripped of all pretense soon, fully naked and exposed. Even without our lips touching, that look, reaching its peak in that very moment, felt like a dangerous rope tightly binding me, carrying with it the constant threat of breaking or of lingering, unrelenting pressure. My chest tightened, my heart racing wildly, while a wave of searing heat surged from deep within my lower abdomen. My head screamed to escape, yet my legs felt rooted to the ground, unable to move a single millimeter. I was nearly driven mad, my last vestiges of sanity slipping away as I surrendered myself to this space, the one that had once been familiar and bound to tempt. Now had become a suffocating desert, trapped between a giant man and an instinct-driven woman. "If you work so hard, sit down for a bit while I grab you something icy to drink." His voice was hoarse and unpleasant, and he was trembling slightly. I turned and bolted toward the kitchen, as if trying to escape from my life, but turning my back on him was an even bigger mistake. Behind me, that heavy gaze fell like a news anchor peeling off his makeup, passing down vertebra by vertebra along my spine, making every hair on my body stand on end with waves of tingling numbness. Standing by the cold marble counter in the kitchen, apologizing, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. To cool myself down, I hurriedly opened the fridge, but the blast of cold air seemed to stir up an inexplicable wave of scorching heat in my lower abdomen, doing absolutely nothing to help. My hands shook as I reached for a glass and started filling it with ice cubes. The clinking sound of the ice hitting the glass was especially loud, piercing through the silence because my fingers were shaking so badly. Just as I was about to turn around after pouring in the icy water, my heart sank straight to the bottom of my chest. He, who had been lounging comfortably on the living room sofa, had somehow closed in until we were less than half a step apart. The air, which had been slightly stiffened by the cold air, was instantly consumed by the masculine heat radiating from his broad chest and his overpowering scent, turning it into a suffocating tropical night. "Drink this," you said. I didn't even dare meet his gaze, carefully handing him the glass filled with icy water. Chen Yu grabbed the hand resting on my back, his large, burning palm enveloping mine entirely. My breath caught. The coldness of the glass and the intense heat radiating from his palm collided fiercely between my fingers, sending a shockwave straight down my spine like lightning. It was empty, just a casual touch, his rough, callous thumb gently traced along the veins on the back of my hand, barely brushing against them, a delicate, almost teasing caress that sent chills racing up my skin. That roughness made my rational circuits short-circuit in an instant. I knew I should pull away, but my body was completely locked in place by the heat of this mature man, unable to move. I didn't even want to push him away. "Tenue," I whispered, my voice trembling like a mischievous buzz, but he pulled my hand closer still, leaning in close to my ear. "How come your eyelashes are like this, see?" Making my ears burn with embarrassment. His lips hovered just inches from my earlobe, and that moment of extreme tension made my blood rush upward. Why did I get so angry I wanted to scream? Why did such a passionate, beautiful woman always sit here like a corpse, holding her breath and trembling inside? Who ran from my husband, leaving 5 years ago, the tragic end of my life as a woman. I'd hidden myself completely behind a spotless, pristine home in the mask of a dignified middle-aged woman. Even I didn't want to admit how lonely and stifled I'd become, mercilessly striking at the softest part of my heart. How lonely must it be to live alone in this empty house? Which gentle words shattered the 5-year-old wall of my rationality, causing it to crumble with a loud crash, and tears I'd been holding back burst forth in an instant, not out of shame, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being recognized as a whole woman, someone whose warmth had been long denied by others. Chen Yu carefully took the glass of ice water from my hand and placed it on the marble table. Before the last stint had even finished, he suddenly wrapped his arms around my slender waist, pulling me forcefully against his hard body. I was completely trapped between the marble countertop and Chen Yu's chest. Through the thin knit sweater, his bulging muscles and boiling body, he pressed against me without a gap, his strong masculine scent and heavy breathing instantly filling my vision. My leg almost collapsed, only able to cling tightly to his sturdy shoulders, desperately trying to escape this moment. Pushing me away, he cupped her face with his rough hand, his dark eyes fixed on my trembling lips. This was the last chance to run. But faced with his hot, fierce stare, I slowly closed my eyes amid the tingling shivers running down my spine, not pushing him away, but instead wrapping my arms around his thick neck, tilting my head back to meet his scorching lips. On the cold marble, the ice cubes in the glass were slowly melting, just like my last shred of sanity dissolving completely at this very moment. As I tilted my head back, his huge fire lips engulfed mine completely. The icy chill of the water that had been swirling between my fingers moments before was instantly overwhelmed by his volcanic heat. This wasn't just a kiss, it was the feeling of being violently invaded and destroyed by a predator after 5 years of pent-up pressure. In the extreme pleasure of oxygen deprivation and dizziness, his powerful masculine scent and the faint sweat on his neck acted like a draught, stimulating every nerve in my body to its absolute limit. When I gasped for air and my lips parted slightly, he seized the opportunity, plunging deeper and more directly into my most tender spots. His eyelashes brushing against my lips, our tongues tangled together, our breaths mingling sticky and intimate. His first kiss burned hotter than anything I'd ever felt. My legs had already gone completely limp. Leaning against the cold marble island, I felt like I was slipping away, held fast only by his hands gripping my slender waist. His breath flew along my spine through my thin shirt, each touch sending waves of tingling goosebumps coursing through my body. Societal standards, and the heavy shell of a respectable widow on it dissolved under his deep breathing, crumbling and disappearing in an instant. With one swift motion, he lifted me up entirely, my toes leaving the cold marble, and I instinctively clung to his broad, sturdy shoulders like a vine. The overwhelming strength of the 30-year-old man, someone I'd never fully relied on anyone else for in 5 years, cleverly surrendered in his massive male embrace. The violent heartbeat radiating from his broad chest pounded directly into my chest, my blood surging through my veins as if boiling. I buried my face in his neck, letting out a shallow sigh. He walked steadily toward the living room, his heavy footsteps echoing. Surreptitiously, the same living room 10 minutes earlier, where he'd personally drawn the heavy massage curtains, sealing it off from any light. No one could judge. That dark, safe curtain burned away the last sliver of my wavering sanity. I was gently laid onto the spacious leather sofa in the living room. The cool leather brushed against my overheated skin, and I instinctively squeezed my eyes shut. Soon, this big man's blazing way would cover me completely. My wildly beating heart, on the verge of bursting, would held its breath. But then, just when I thought its explosive heat would overwhelm me, it suddenly stopped as if by magic. In the darkness, his voice dropped low, serious enough to take your breath away. He didn't press further. He spread his arms wide on either side of the sofa, keeping a distance from her. His gaze was laser-sharp, focused solely on her. Only his rapid heartbeat and her heavy breathing remained clearly echoing in my ears. If you push me away now, I'll pretend nothing happened and quietly leave. My heart felt like it might stop. In the darkness, his kind eyes showed no hint of joking. This was anti-kindness. It was pushing me to the perfect edge, cruelly cutting off my escape route. If I walked out the door right now, you'd go back to your perfectly composed daily life, breathing quietly in your spotless, spacious living room. Growing old alone, his deep voice cut through me cruelly. He could have charged forward aggressively, like a beast, but instead, he handed over complete control to me, asking if I wanted to jump off the cliff myself. But if you hold on to me now, that means you've chosen me completely. Once you step in, I'll never stop, not even halfway. Surreptitiously, you'll ever make. Then as a forceful declaration that I am shedding my disguise and becoming a whole woman again. It has the last perfect chance to escape back into the calm, composed world of adulthood. But when I met his gaze, all I could see were fragments of the past 5 years of terrifying loneliness. After my husband left, I'd maintained this immaculate, hiding myself away in the cold, unrelenting solitude of my stubborn years, breathing silently like a specimen. If I pushed away this big body now, let go of his hand, I'd have to return to that suffocating, to my routine, crushed by cruelty and death. Having tasted this boiling masculine heat, the cold loneliness of the past had become a truly unbearable hell. I stretched my trembling hands toward him, wrapping them tightly around his thick neck and broad back. Wanting to crush him in my grip, I threw myself into that boiling infant, panting into his ear, like a wild animal. Hell, no retreat, absolutely no retreat. Tears mixed with intense relief and the burning desire to be consumed by him. I begged him, please, save me from this terrible loneliness. That decisive answer snapped the last chain of restraint, holding him back. As I reached out with both arms, clutching his thick neck and broad back, his immense body, he poured down on me without a gap, blinding me with white light. His eyelashes, they really drove me crazy, followed by a raspy, coarse breath as if he were a beast. By the time his hips reached behind my earlobes, layers of clothing had silently fallen to the floor. I called him to remember any specific actions that had taken place in the darkness. No, from the start, whose physical processes and their sequence had any mattered to me at all. Only the 5 long years of pain, built up and sealed off layer by society as gaze had finally collapsed with a deafening roar, crushing reality. Tenuous thinking function had completely shut down. All reason and logic in his brain had burned away, leaving only raw sensation sharp. He carefully drew the heavy velvet massage curtains, turning the living room into a dense abyss that blocked out all light. All noise and standards were locked tight, leaving only his heavy breathing and his deep, masculine exhale to pin me down. His boiling body heat became the only reality. Then time seemed to stop altogether. Between the cool, sticky leather sofa and the ferocious masculine heat that consumed everything, I floated endlessly like a ship lost at sea. My skin rubbed against his without a gap, each contact sending tingling shivers straight up my spine. I opened my mouth, letting out silent gasps. His eyes watched me, his kind gaze holding me tight. I clung to his sweaty, firm shoulders, twisting my waist like a wild animal. In that suffocating void of time, I was no longer anyone as gentle and or composed middle-aged woman. I was no longer the poor widow abandoned 5 years ago. I spent years maintaining this spotless, spacious living room, enduring nightly bouts of cold, lonely solitude. My tragic past frozen like a specimen. That cold, miserable emptiness within me was now utterly shattered by the overwhelming presence of this massive man. But a satisfying bottle brought a satisfying thrill. That tears of sweet joy, finally finding the immense heat that could save me from 5 years of cruel encouragement, erupting from the deepest marrow of my bone. A few more tears. And what's from my mouth was empty, just sobs anymore. It was proof that the fragile, icy world I'd been holding on to for 5 years had finally collapsed. I couldn't think about anything anymore. Didn't you want to think about anything? I willingly surrendered myself completely to this perfect dark sanctuary built by the wild man, watching the process of my lifelong loneliness turning to ashes thick, bulging veins tied me around my waist, his breath pressing down on me. This was a terrifying, colossal power. There was no mind left. I did on the rope of reason with my own hands, jumping into hell at the cost of a thrilling, brutal redemption, a night of tears, the perfect rebirth of the wild beast. In the darkness behind the heavy curtains, everything burned away into a dazzling white glow. How long had it been? A heart laughed through the violent storm of emotions that had engulfed the entire living room. Fortunately, he'd carefully drawn the heavy velvet massage curtains closed so thick that even in broad daylight, the room called any tell whether morning had arrived or not. In that deep, ever denser abyss, and the heavy leather sofa where breaths exchanged with a coarse rhythm, there was nothing but the warm, slick set of two bodies entwining to each other. I noticed this passage seems to be in traditional Chinese, but text you provided contains Chinese characters, not Japanese kanji or hiragana. If you'd like me to convert Japanese text from kanji into hiragana while preserving the kanji and converting numbers, you will need a different type of service altogether. I felt the warmth of his body pressing gently against my cheeks, his body from chest providing a quiet refuge as his larger, sturdy hand softly stroked my skin, a touch both tender and profound. My eyelids slowly fluttered open, yet instead of the moral guilt, the weight of societal judgment, the terrifying shame of betraying a friend, or the usual remorse that should have made my whole body tremble with deep regret, a languid, intense smile spread across my lips without restraint, during which I felt utterly dead and dried up as a woman last night. Under the overwhelming presence of this 30-year-old man, I was purified as if baptized. I experienced a perfect sense of fulfillment, completely filled by the immense male breath that surged through me, joyously taking over every single cell in my body. When had I ever breathed so fully, so utterly free from pretense? I lightly touched his smooth shoulder blades, feeling as though I'd been trapped forever in that sweet, tranquil calm of this mature man's embrace. 000. 0 smartphones casually tossed onto the sofa and marble floor suddenly began to vibrate violently, shattering the perfect darkness. It wasn't just any ordinary notification. It was a relentless, unrelenting stream of calls, their flickering screens coldly illuminating the secluded chamber behind the velvet curtains. My heart plummeted to an almost imperceptible low, and I felt an overwhelming wave of terror. 2 words clearly appeared: Yan U.S. Mom, my closest friend of 30 years. Instantly, it felt as if icy water had been poured over me from head to toe. The rational circuits that had governed my life in this small town abruptly rebounded. Hasan beside me Shun, man slept soundly, drenched in sweat. Whose son was he? Everything came into sharp focus, piercing my vision, and my hands trembled as I reached for the sofa, trying to pull myself up and turn off the phone. I could pretend nothing had happened. Perfect friend, even make excuses if I had to, but as soon as I reached out to grab the phone, my fingers brushed against a single eyelash. and knowingly awakened some time earlier. Gravelly voice, still half asleep, his tone wild and animalistic. Then in one swift motion, his thick, powerful arms wrapped tightly around my waist. Heart just. The phone continued to vibrate, wildly on the cold marble floor. But he held my hand steady while slowly tracing his fingers down along my bare back, rekindling a hidden flame within me. So, are you going to answer? Lost deep in this abyss, he stared at me in the dark, his gaze devoid of any worldly morality, to guilt only pure, savage male desire, determined never to let anyone take away what he declaimed from the woman who willingly stepped into his arms. The phone, scratching against the flickering floor, emitted a sharp, piercing vibration, a hot, insistent question from the man whose body seemed to seep into my very core. In this room, I felt an insane sense of security, completely controlled by the man sprawled across the sofa. The clash of these two sensations, the crushing dread of the outside world and the intoxicating relief within, utterly surrendered to in my brain like a bolt of lightning, triggering a surge of suffocating sorrow. Tears welled up in my eyes and a strange tingling sensation spread to my lower abdomen, leaving me numb and weak. I thought of Sister Xian, who had lowered her head to kiss me, her voice growing like a beast. I'd return to that pitiful, cold existence as a widow, but if I didn't, he answered, I'd stay by his side forever. At this crossroads where the hottest, most perfect woman of our time stood, faced with the choice of stepping out into the cold, harsh reality or hiding once more in the darkness behind the heavy velvet curtains, shedding all pretense and surrendering herself entirely to his burning embrace, her phone kept vibrating to his burning incessantly without pause. Slowly, ever so slowly reaching down toward the floor, I pressed and held the power button. A screen went black and the noisy vibrations ceased, as if they'd been a lie, filled only with the man's breath. This was the moment I'd finally severed with my own hands 30 years of worldly chain. Even if this madness led straight into an irreversible hell, I'd willingly cling tight to Chenu's sturdy neck in the darkness, wrapping myself around him like a vine, pressing my lips against his scorching ones. I'd stay by his side until the very end, even if people spat at us or pointed fingers. After 5 years of a brutal desert journey, this man had built for me a sanctuary behind thick velvet curtains, a place I would become an irreplaceable paradise and salvation. We'd cut every thread of reason, fully transforming ourselves into beasts. Together we'd shut down all alarms of reality and once again devour each other with fiery intensity. In an old apartment building in Taipei Star and District, a night had grown so deep it seemed like ink that couldn't be dissolved. When YYU, 53 years old, felt a slight tremor at her fingertips in the darkness. Holding her breath, she slowly and gently pulled open the zipper of the tent. Everything was utterly silent, a dark stillness broken only occasionally by the faint chirping of insects in the distance and the thunderous beating of her own heart. One year the man's voice sounded hoarse in the darkness, tinged with a suppressed tremor like a tightly stretched string that would snap at the slightest touch. The ethical boundary between the two seemed to be teetering on the brink of collapse right there in that narrow space, swaying with every intertwined breath. But when exactly did it all start spiraling out of control? Hello everyone, this is Twilight's Journey. Thank you for joining me again today to listen to my stories. If you enjoy them, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and it'll give me the motivation to keep sharing more stories with you. Wanyu is 53 years old and lives in a meticulously maintained apartment in the Da'an district of Taipei. She has been married to her husband, Zhang Ziking, for 25 years. Ziking's son is 6 years old this year. Is a manager at Zhongxin Corporation and goes out early and comes home late every day, leading a routine life as precise as a clockwork mechanism. Every morning at 7 o'clock, a bowl of warm miso soup and a simply yet steaming serving of white rice always grace the dining table. While you carefully prepared breakfast, each dish reflecting her thoughtful creativity. Yet his ain't just kept his head down, his eyes fixed on the news scrolling across his phone screen without even lifting his head once. The coffee has cooled down, Wanyu said softly, her voice tinged with a hint of cautious flattery. But Ziki merely hummed in response, his fingers continuing to glide across the phone screen, as if that tiny screen held a world far more important than the person sitting right beside him. Like an invisible, thick wall that separated the two of them, each locked in their own private world. It has been 5 years already. How he turned out this way. Wanyu looked at the familiar stranger across from her, silently asking herself in her heart. Ziking got out, picked up his briefcase, and said without looking back, I'll be home a bit later today. Handle dinner on your own. The sound of the front door closing, a sharp click echoed through the empty living room, sounding especially jarring. Wanyu sat alone at the dining table, letting out a deep sigh. but the autumn sunlight outside the window was bright and cheerful. It called until it reached the corners of her heart, leaving her still feeling cold and desolate. Her children had all grown up and started their own families. This once lively home now held only 2 people, though to be more precise, and now felt like 2 strangers living under the same roof. I am eating alone at noon. Sister-in-law, his painting is a true reflection of one U.S. life. It was past 6 o'clock in the evening, but sitting still had Auntie come home, and there was Auntie a single message on his phone. She cooked herself a bowl of instant noodles and ate it while watching TV. The male and female leads bickered endlessly, yet in the end, watching this, she felt deeply envious, and her eyes began to burn with tears. When did we even stop feeling something like this? At 11 o'clock at night, Zitting finally came home, reeking of alcohol. He said before striding straight into the bedroom, even taking off his shoes as he went. Anya sat on the sofa, staring blankly at the ceiling. After a long while, she finally got up and walked into the bathroom, glancing at her reflection in the mirror. At 53, already bore fine lines that had quietly crept into the corners of her eyes, although her skin was still well maintained. Those eyes once full of life had lost their sparkle long ago, looking instead like a stagnant pool of water. When did I become a transparent person? Days passed by one after another, just like blank sheets of paper printed out by a copier. The Mid-Autumn Festival is 3 days away. From early morning, YOU has been bustling around in the kitchen frying fish, deep frying pork ribs, and making shrimp balls, all with frantic haste. Just after the tea, and as soon as he opened the door, he saw Zekinya's younger brother, Jean Wang, who was 49 years old. He was holding a box of premium fruit in his hand and wore a gentle smile on his face. Come on in, Wang. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Wang's voice was slightly subdued, and it felt as though half of him had withered away along with her. Living alone, it feels strangely lonely staying home by myself on Mid-Autumn Festival. Wang's voice carried a hint of melancholy. Hearing this, YOU felt a pang in her heart and quickly said, "Silly, family members should celebrate holidays together." Of course. She brought out the dishes she had prepared. Wang took a bite and his eyes lit up. Sister-in-law, your cooking is still just as excellent. Zitting was sitting on the sofa watching TV without even turning his head. He simply said in a casual tone, "You're right here." The atmosphere instantly became awkward, almost as if the air had frozen solid. When he was just about to return to the kitchen to add more food when Wang suddenly followed her. "Sister-in-law, I'll help you wash the dishes. You've already gotten the hang of it yourself," Wang said, looking a bit embarrassed. The 2 stood side by side in front of the sink, one washing, the other rinsing. The sound of running water gurgled softly, yet unexpectedly created a sense of unspoken understanding between them. "Sister-in-law, how have you been lately?" Wang asked softly, his eyes filled with concern. "Not well," she replied somewhat listlessly, her movements going slower as she held the object in her hand. Wang paused and turned his head to look at her. "Has brother been treating sister-in-law well lately?" Wang's hand paused for a moment, then she forced a smile and said, "Has it just plain and ordinary?" In that smile lurked an indescribable loneliness and grievance, like a flower trembling on the verge of falling in the wind and drain. And why didn't he ask any further questions? But his eyes were filled with deep sympathy, eyes, the one you had Auntie felt in far too long. Because I saw her not merely as a thing, but as a person. After dinner, just as Wang was about to leave, Zitting suddenly spoke up Papashi. "Hey, it is kind of sad that Wang lives all by himself. YMYU, why don't you start delivering some groceries to him once a week from now on?" Wang looked at the gentleman, her heart filled with mixed emotions. Zitting had never shown her such care, yet he was so enthused younger brother. Still, she nodded and said okay. That night, lying in bed, Wang's warm smile kept floating endlessly in Wang's smile. "He looks so lonely, just as lonely as I am. Moonlight, you should say. Moon through the window. And I'm going to, she say," thinking to herself, "Wait, that's just delivering vegetables once a week, no big deal at all. But why is my chest suddenly beating so wildly for no apparent reason?" A week after the Mid-Autumn Festival, YU packed a thermal container full of freshly cooked dishes, braised pork, raised fish, and stir-fried greens, all of which Wang loved to eat. She entered Wang's apartment address into the navigation system and set off driving. As the car drove down the road, she suddenly felt inexplicably nervous. Her palms were even sweating. "Why is it like this? It is just delivering vegetables after all." I pressed the doorbell, and when YS voice came through the intercom, tinged with a hint of surprise, "Sister-in-law." The door opened, and YU walked into the 14th floor apartment, carrying groceries. chilly atmosphere. After all, a home without its female owner always seemed lifeless. On the wall still hung a photo of him and his late wife. Their smiles were frozen in time, forever captured in the past. Come in and have a seat, have a cup of coffee before you leave. The two sat on the sofa, and Wai brought over a cup of hot coffee, its aroma gently wafting through the air. Sister-in-law, I really thank you. It has been ages since I've tasted food that tastes so much like home. His voice was sincere, and his eyes were fixed on her, full of concentration. When you smiled, her cheeks faintly flushed. What is there to be polite about among family? I'll come by often from now on. That day, they talked for a long time, first about Wai's work in architectural design, and then about the recent updates on Wanyu and their 2 children. Before they knew it, more than 2 hours had passed. As she was leaving, Wanyu looked at her reflection in the elevator and noticed that the corners of her mouth were subtly turned upward. It has been ages since I've had such a relaxed chat with someone. On my way home, Wai's words "thank you" kept echoing in my ears. So it feels so good to be needed by others. From that day on, what started as once a week gradually became twice and then 3 times. Last time the braised pork didn't seem quite enough, so I made a little extra. I tried a new dish this week, let me bring some over for you to taste. After finishing the meal, we did have a cup of coffee and chat, turning what started as half an hour into an hour, then to an hour. Sister-in-law, you've been looking much better lately, Wai said suddenly one day. Wanyu was taken aback for a moment. Her cheeks felt slightly warm, and her heart seemed to be racing like a little deer trapped inside. Their hands accidentally brushed against each other, almost as if they'd been shot. Both of them jumped in surprise, yet neither immediately pulled their hands away, spreading from their fingertips all the way to their hearts, leading in a tingling, numbing sensation. Another week passed, and when Wanyu got up, she accidentally stumbled. Jianwei quickly reached out to steady her waist. Mitchell drew closer, close enough to hear each other's breathing, close enough to feel the warmth of the other's body. The air was filled with an indescribable, ambiguous, or like fermenting wine, gently intoxicating one's senses. Everything quietly changed. Wanyu went to Wai's house, started paying attention to what clothes she was wearing. Before leaving, she hesitated for a long time in front of the mirror, even applying a light touch of makeup and spraying a bit of perfume. What am I even doing? I am just delivering groceries, Anna thought. But deep down, she knew perfectly well that she wanted Wai to tell her she was beautiful, and she longed to see a spark of admiration in his eyes. Wai really spoke up. Sister-in-law, you look absolutely stunning today. The look in his eyes as he gazed at her was deep and focused, as if he were trying to imprint an image onto his mind. It had been so long, so incredibly long, since she'd felt this way. But at the same time, another kind of unease was quietly creeping into my heart. Is this really okay? P.S. My uncle-in-law. In November, Taipei's evenings had already begun to grow cooler. Ziding remained busy with social engagements and playing golf, rarely ever staying home. Wanyu, on the other hand, felt relieved because this way, she had more time to go over to Wai's place. That day, Wai suddenly said, Sister-in-law, today I'll treat you to a meal out. You are always cooking for me, now it is my turn to treat you back. The 2 of them arrived at a quiet little cafe in Xinyi district. Outside the window, maple leaves were gradually turning red in autumn, creating a delightful scene. As they were chatting, Wai suddenly looked at her seriously and asked, Sister-in-law, has brother been treating you well lately? Wanyu lowered her head and stirred her coffee, her voice very soft, just the same as always. Wai's eyes were filled with heartfelt concern. He reached out and gently placed his hand over the back of hers, which was resting on the table. Sister-in-law, someone as wonderful as you shouldn't just be taken for granted. At that moment, Wai's eyes instantly turned red, and tears welled up in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that, no one ever had. Wai's fingers gently stroked the back of her hand, conveying a silent comfort and strength. If you are feeling sad, feel free to come to me anytime, I'll just listen to you. As she stepped out of the cafe, Wai's hands, gripping the steering wheel, were trembling. At 53 years old, I can still feel this flutter in my heart. In early December, Ziding suddenly suggested, the weather is nice this weekend, how about going camping? Wai's heart tightened in an instant. Staying overnight with Wai. She agreed on the surface, but inside, her heart felt like a jar of mixed flavors, both excited and terrified. The weekend arrived, and the 3 of them drove to a riverside campsite in Yilong. After setting up their 2 tents, I am tired, let me lie down in the tent first. Less than 10 minutes later, snoring could be heard from inside the tent. Wanyu and Jiawei took a walk along the riverbank. The breeze was a bit cool. When do you get cold like this? Wai took off his own coat and draped it over her shoulders. I am pretty cold resistant, no big deal. His body temperature seeped through his coat, carrying a faint scent of tobacco and masculine aroma. As they walked, Richu suddenly stopped and locked eyes. The sound of the flowing river seemed to have vanished entirely, leaving only the sound of each other's breathing. Sister-in-law, there's something I'd like to tell you. Wai had just begun to speak when from afar, Zikinya's voice called out, "Where have you guys run off to?" The two were so startled that they immediately pulled apart, looking like children who'd just been caught doing something wrong. Zikin drank quite a bit of alcohol and soon passed out. Returning to the tent, only Yu and Wai remained by the campfire. The flickering flames danced across their faces, reflecting the complex emotions in each other's eyes. Wai finally spoke his slightly sister-in-law. "Lately all I can think about is you every single moment of the day and night." When U.S. dear suddenly spilled down as long-suppressed emotions finally broke free. I know it is wrong after all. You are my brother-in-law and I am your sister-in-law, but I just can't help myself. The two held hands tightly, sitting by the campfire for a long time, neither one willing to let go first. At 2:30, the air inside the tent was stiflingly hot, leaving her feeling utterly overwhelmed. She gently zipped open the flap of her own tent and tiptoed over to Wai's tent. The moment her finger touched the zipper, her heart almost leapt out of her chest. The zipper slowly slid down, making a faint sound that seemed especially clear in the quiet night. In the tent, Wai sat up. In the darkness, his expression was hard to make out, but his voice was terribly hoarse. "Wan, I just want to be a real woman," Wan said softly, tears rolling down her cheeks. For the past 5 years, in Zikinya's eyes, it seems like we've been reduced to nothing more than a cook and a laundry woman. Wai reached out and pulled her into his arm. "From in my eyes, you've always been precious, not just as my sister-in-law, but as a truly captivating woman." That night, too, the boundaries of the forbidden utterly collapsed. For the tent was pitch black, it was full with the long-lost warmth of their bodies and their trembling. For the first time in her life, Yu intensely felt herself desired, cherished like a rare and priceless treasure. As dawn approached, Yu quietly left and returned to her own tent. Jijiang was still fast asleep, completely unaware of everything that had just happened. Lying in her sleeping bag, she knew deep down we've already crossed that river from which there is no turning back. In the days that followed, the two of them behaved like teenagers caught in a secret romance, careful yet utterly unable to resist each other. Sometimes they did meet at Wai's home, other times they did head to a quiet motel. Each encounter felt like dancing on the edge of a blade, dangerous yet irresistibly addictive. Until mid-February. One day Qian Zh came home early and found that Yu's car was gone. In the evening, he finally couldn't help but ask, "Why have you been running over to Wai lately?" Yu explained guiltily. Omi's gaze had changed, now filled with suspicion and scrutiny. A few days later, when Yu was in the bathroom, Jijiang secretly glanced at her phone. All the messages were laid bare before him. Those ambiguous words felt like sharp knives piercing his eyes. That night it felt like an earthquake had struck the house. "What the hell are you and Wai up to?" Ziking slammed his phone onto the floor, his whole body trembling. His angry roar echoed throughout the apartment. Yu burst into tears as she confessed, but for the first time, she finally poured out all the resentment that had been building up inside her. "For 25 years have you ever once treated me as a woman? For 25 years, in your eyes, I've been nothing more than a maid who cooks and does laundry." The two argued until dawn. Finally Ziking said with red-rimmed eyes, "But let's get a divorce." Yu didn't answer, she just silently shed tears. The next day, she called Wai, and both of them cried. "Let us hold off on getting in touch for now, wait until the dust settles." A month later, Wai sent a messenger. "Sister-in-law, the company has transferred me to Hayosian, and I'll be leaving next week or open." The pain so intense she couldn't breathe. For the last time, they met by the river where they'd once taken their walks. The two embraced tightly, neither willing to let go, as if they were trying to merge each other completely into their very bones and blood. "Do you regret it?" Wai asked, his voice choked with emotion. "Never," Yu replied through tears. "The happiest moments of my life have been the times I've spent with you." As the sun set in the west, Yu turned and walked away without looking back, because she knew that as soon as she glanced over her shoulder, the tears would never stop flowing again. In June, half a year later, summer in Taipei was already very hot. Yu stood by the window, watching the sunlight outside. Wai has been gone for half a year, and the two have never contacted each other since. Sitting on her relationship, but a turn to calm on the surface, has actually become even more distant, like strangers living under the same roof. Oh, you had changed. She was no longer that transparent homemaker. She'd learned to love herself. In the mirror, though she was already 53, her eyes now held a spark. Badass because she knew she'd once been truly loved and had once longed deeply. Though that forbidden love could never be openly acknowledged, it had enabled her to rediscover herself as a woman. That day, Ziking casually remarked, I heard why Wally has been transferred back to Taipei again. Wan Yu's heart skipped a beat, but she simply said oh in a casual tone. In the evening, she received a message from Wei Wei's sister-in-law. I am back in Taipei. She stared at the screen for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. So many words welled up in her heart, yet in the end, she typed as one line, I am fine, take good care of yourself too. This is the final message. Wan Yu put down her phone and walked onto the balcony. The summer breeze blew gently, carrying a hint of warmth. She softly said to the wind, Wan Wei, thank you, happiness. That voice drifted away with the wind, traveling far, far away. As we get older, love still returns sometimes in ways that aren't permitted. Mayang Bonacishasai of that moment is enough to make us feel alive and still capable of being loved. My name is Chen Mo, and I am an on-site internet repair technician. Today is Sunday finally. I can take a breather at home, and my girlfriend Su Yao just happened to drop by. I'd been planning to spend some quality time with her during our break, but early in the morning my phone started ringing. The dispatch system alerted me to an urgent malfunction somewhere. There was nothing for it. I cursed under my breath 1,000 times, but I still had to grab my tools and head out the door. After all, this is the only job that puts food on the table for me. This address is in an upscale villa community with exceptionally well-maintained greenery. I had to drive around several times before finally finding the single-family home. Standing in front of the intricately carved iron gate, I took a deep breath and politely rang the doorbell. The woman who opened the door was a strikingly beautiful lady, appearing to be in her early 30s. She casually wore her hair in a fluffy bun, with a few stray strands softly framing her pale neck. She was dressed only in a light silk slip dress with spaghetti straps. The hem just barely covered the base of her thighs, swaying gently with every movement. She seemed to notice that my gaze had lingered on her for a brief moment, and her cheeks instantly flushed a light shade of pink, her eyes avoiding mine slightly. Yamponashishasui, I am the network technician. A backend system has detected an anomaly in your network signal. May I come in and take a look? I made sure my voice sounded professional and calm. Really? That is wonderful, your timing is perfect. Her voice was soft and sweet, tinged with a hint of surprise. As she turned slightly to let me in, this villa is decorated with utmost luxury yet maintains a refined and tasteful elegance. It has 3 floors and 9 rooms, plus a private courtyard and a swimming pool. What she should say is going to take some time. I struck up a casual chat with her now and then. The young woman's name is Yu, and she is the lady of the house and usually teaches dance at a high-end training institution. Her husband, Zhao Jianwo, is a university professor who enjoys considerable fame in his field. Being Sunday, he'd taken the kids back to his parents' place early in the morning, leaving her all alone at home. She was just about to start binge-watching a TV series when suddenly the internet connection went down. Just as she was about to call tech support, I happened to show up at her door out of the blue. Her fingertips accidentally brushed against the back of my hand, glowing like a ripe peach ready to burst open. Although I am not some earth-shattering white handsome guy, I do have a fair complexion and sharply defined features. Thanks to years of outdoor work that has given me a toned, athletic physique and standing at 1.8 meters tall otherwise. My girlfriend Su Yao, who is a graduate student, ever would be taken a fancy. I checked the router, met with him thoroughly and found no harbor faults. Although a gorgeous woman was hanging around nearby, occasionally bending over to pick something up and revealing a tantalizing curve, I still forced myself to stay focused on my work, just eager to finish up quickly and hand-hold. It might be a problem with the computer system settings. Could I borrow your computer for a bit? I'm belong to my husband, and there is some important data. I'll have to give him a call first. After a while, Yuan brought over a laptop, gave me the login password, and relayed her husband's words, please don't mess around with the files inside. Not long after I finished checking, and the computer seemed to be in good condition with no issues at all. The initial investigation shows no issues so far, but I need to head back to the office and check the server side for any other configuration conflicts. Is that so? Yuan bit her lower lip slightly, looking a bit disappointed. The rise and fall of her chest trembled gently with each breath. Then I'll trouble you. I packed up my toolbox and was just about to leave when suddenly there was a hurried knocking at the door. 女人不爱70岁. Yuan opened the door, and there stood a staff member wearing a full set of protective gear. We've received notice from higher authorities that there has been a close contact case in the community, and we need to immediately impose a 14-day lockdown, allowing only entry but no exit. But we have guests at home right now. What about him? You will all just have to isolate at your home for now. We hope you will all cooperate with our work, the staff member said in a tone that left no room for doubt. I never in my wildest dreams could have imagined that. Over the next 14 days, I'd be living together with a stunning young woman at her home. 女人不爱70岁. Yuan had a brief conversation with her husband. Pandai also explained the situation to my girlfriend and my company. Afterward, she settled me into a guest room on the second floor and brought me some of her husband's desk clothes. Sorry, Judge and Ivy put you through a lot these past few days. His clothes all belong to my husband. He has never worn them yet, so just take them and have them washed and changed. Oh, by the way, Yuan suddenly asked shyly, her eyes filled with a hint of anticipation. Can you cook? We can't order takeout right now, and the community just delivered some ingredients, but I don't know how to prepare them. Hey, don't make a big deal out of it, leave the cooking to me. In the days that followed during isolation together, we surprisingly got along exceptionally well. Every day, I come up with new ways to prepare 3 meals a day. After we finish eating, Yuan immediately rushes to wash the dishes and even takes the initiative to help me wash clothes and tidy up the room, going so far as to wash my undergarments as well. It seems like we're a truly loving couple, except that we sleep in separate rooms. Her attitude toward me has also shifted from initially being politely distant to occasionally becoming warm and playful, even cracking jokes now and then. Sometimes late at night, I'd catch her wandering around the living room wearing a sexy, shirgaz nightgown. Tantalizing allure was nothing short of testing the very limits of my youthful, passionate nature. My mouth is parched and dry. Remembering that there was chilled soda in the fridge, I headed downstairs. As I passed Yuan's room on the first floor, I heard muffled, breathless gasps coming from inside, gasps that made my face flush and my heart race. The door was fully closed. It left a narrow crack. I swallowed hard, then nervously and tearfully peered through the crack into the room. That breathtaking scenery made my breathing suddenly quicken. I don't know how long I'd been staring. Suddenly, the people inside seemed to notice the movement outside the door. I broke into a cold sweat and immediately turned and fled in panic, returning to my room with my heart pounding wildly. When I'm on a 70岁, had happened and continued to interact with me as usual, though whenever our eyes met, there was an inexplicable hint of something more in her gaze. That day, the community delivered some premium steaks. In the evening, I carefully prepared pan-fried steak and other exquisite Western-style dishes. After setting the table, Yuan exclaimed, "Wow, this is amazing." She pulled out a bottle of red wine and insisted on setting up a few candles, saying that when you are eating such delicious food, there simply has to be a bit of ceremony. After clinking glasses, Yuan suddenly felt a bit melancholy, her eyes glistening with tears. "It has nothing, just that I'm feeling a bit sentimental. After being with my husband for so long, we've never once had a romantic dinner like this." Lost in beans a wine glass and drained it in one gulp. Soon we polished off the food in front of us. Yuan bought a 70岁. The wine also quickly ran out, but she felt she hadn't had enough yet. After clearing the table, she fetched another bottle of red wine and asked me to join her for another round. With a beautiful woman and fine wine by my side, I temporarily forgot about my girlfriend back home. Both of us found our gazes toward each other slightly hazy. Yuan's face was flushed, and the softness of her chest brushed lightly against me without intention. My blood surged rapidly. "Yuan bought a 70岁. Yuan suggested playing true. They decided to settle it with rock, paper, scissors. Whoever wins gets to ask the other person a question. If the other person doesn't want to answer, they all have to drink a glass of wine. I'd be happy to. In the first round I lost. Is it me who is prettier, or your girlfriend?" I pretended to stare at her intently, occasionally nodding in satisfaction, just as she wore a look of delight. I downed the drink in front of me. Yuan said with a playful scold, lightly punching my chest with her little pink fist. The force was soft and gentle, more like a flirtatious gesture than a real punch. In the second round I won. After thinking for a moment, I asked, "Are you happy with your husband?" Yuan bought a 70岁. Though Yuan had originally intended to drink some alcohol, but after thinking it over, she put down her glass. "Forget it anyway. It has been ages since I've let myself relax like this, so might as well just get it all off my chest. My husband is 20 years older than me and has been married once before. I married him without a second thought. But after only a few years of what I hoped would be a stable life together, I found out that he'd actually been secretly keeping the female mistress. No wonder he used to insist mistress. No wonder he used to insist on having sex with me every now and then. Now it has turned into months at a time when he doesn't touch me at all. When I confronted him about it, he threatened me if I didn't want a divorce, son. He better just leave him alone in plain dice as his professor's wife. Since that's the case, sir, why don't you just divorce him? She said if we get divorced, I'll pull every string he has to make sure the child is awarded to him and leave me with nothing at all. Money doesn't matter what I tend to bear apart with is my child. After finishing her words, Ewan burst into tears and began gulping down the bottle of liquor. Unable to bear seeing her in such distress, I snatched the bottle away and let her lean against my shoulder, weeping bitterly. I gently stroked her head, and before I knew it, our faces were drawing closer and closer. Watching her cry with tears streaming down her face, she looked like a delicate flower battered by wind and drained. My heart was overwhelmed with emotion. Just then, she suddenly pressed her lips against mine, while one hand slowly unfastened my belt. In the days that followed, the entire villa almost became our battlefield, even in the swimming pool. I admit that treating her this way has hurt my girlfriend, but Leon has given me a tenderness I'd never experienced before. When I was with my girlfriend, Su Yao, I felt like a total psychopath, always walking on eggshells, carefully cherishing every little thing she did, but all I got in return was her coldness and disdain. I'd been footing the bill for Su Yao as living expenses and tuition when she said she didn't want to live in the dorm by renting an apartment right next to her school. Whether it was a major or minor occasion, I always made an effort to buy her the gifts she coveted. That the most she ever said to me was that she thought I was incompetent and couldn't provide her with the life she wanted in. She even told me that as soon as she graduated, she'd break up with me. Lately, I've noticed that Su Yao spends less and less. Sometimes I don't see her at all during an entire weekend. When I ask her about it, she vaguely says she is out hanging out with her best friend. In the evenings, when I try to get close to her, she always pushes me away impatiently, or worse, she goes through the motions as if she were a lifeless fish. What are you thinking about? Bjorn snuggled into my arms just after we'd finished our bottle on our marital bed. She yelled, "I'll definitely wear me out completely. I am not thinking about anything actually. I am just thinking that the lockdown will be lifted in 2 days. Will you still look for me, bad little brother? What do you think?" Her heart fluttering with springtime longing. I knew it was going to happen all over again. Happy times always seem to pass so quickly. 14 days went by in a flash. I couldn't wait for it to end so I could go home sooner now, though. I can't help but wish it would be locked down again for another 10 days or half a month. After I got home, I fell back into my old routine. Sometimes when I went to work, my mind would wander, and I'd find myself reminiscing about the days I'd spent in isolation at my villa. My girlfriend still treated me with indifference aside from giving me orders to do this or that. She didn't seem to have much of a kind word for me at all. 7 p.m. Tomorrow at room 3701, Lakeside Grand Hotel. See you there. I anxiously dragged through the day, eagerly anticipating my reunion with Yuan. I told Xiao in advance that I'd be having dinner with colleagues tonight and might not be home until later. She didn't suspect a thing. Maybe she just wasn't as concerned about me as she used to be. As night fell, I arrived at the hotel we'd agreed upon and knocked on the door. As soon as the door opened, before I could even react violently, a heavily built man wearing a mask grabbed me and dragged me inside, then immediately kicked me to the ground. At least 3 or 4 people started beating me mercilessly. After taking a blunt blow to the head, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, it was already broad daylight. I realized I'd been dumped in a desolate, remote countryside. My entire body ached terribly, and blood had soaked through my shirt. Clenching my teeth, I staggered forward, enduring the pain. Just as I was about to collapse, a kind-hearted village elder spotted me and took me to the hospital on his cargo tricycle. I suffered 3 broken ribs, a mild concussion, and several blunt force injuries all over my body. Although none of these injuries were life-threatening, they still caused me considerable pain. It seems these people didn't intend to kill me. They just wanted to give me a taste of what it feels like to suffer. I think I'd pretty much figured out what happened after Yuan's husband, Xiao Jiangwo, came back and discovered that I did an affair with her. He used her phone to send me a message, lured me into a hotel, and then hired a few thugs to give me a beating. I spent a month in the hospital. The moment I stepped out of the hospital, a faint sneer unconsciously appeared on the corner of my mouth. Xiao Yangwo, it is time we settled this score. I know that Yuan's phone is now in his hands. I'd like to talk to you. I don't think you do. have any reason to refuse. Then he sent him another video. Zhao Jiangwu invited me to a tea house that offered excellent privacy. Although the professor from a prestigious university was already over 50, his hair remained jet black and full of vitality. Dressed in a high-quality white shirt and sporting rimless glasses, he gave off an air of upright and sophistication, a true intellectual of the highest caliber. Your employees who met with me today, aren't he those thuns anymore? Zhao Jiangwu kept a straight face and took a sip of tea. Let us get straight to the point. What conditions do you want me to meet before I'll agree to delete those videos? Why didn't he answer him? You tell me first, what have you done till you want? Young man, don't you think that just because a woman has slept with you a few times, she'll develop feelings for you? Zhao Jiangwu said with a cold laugh. You probably don't know that she sent a message herself, do you? So anyway, that is not the main point we're discussing today, Wei. Professor, I should be calling you Principal Xiao now. I learned that Xiao Jiangwu has been appointed as Vice Principal, and his future looks bright. How much do you want? 100,000, 200,000? Or do you want me to become close to you? As long as you agree to delete the video, none of this will be a problem, Xiao Jiangwu said, sounding somewhat impatient. You probably don't know either, do you? That female student Shui riding on top of in the video. I bit my teeth, forcing out a few words through clenched jaws. Su Yao, she is my girlfriend. That is right, I'm not an internet inspector at all, actually. Su Yao and I are lovers and also college classmate. I majored in computer science and, after graduating with a bachelor's degree, joined an internet company. With the teacher as constant encouragement, Su Yao went on to pursue a master's degree under his guidance, and that teacher was Zhao Jiangwu. Ever since Su Yao's college roommate married a rich second-generation heir, Su Yao seems to have become a completely different person. Every time she sees her roommate posting on social media about flaunting luxury goods, spent overseas trips, so Zhao gets furious and starts blaming me for not being able to earn big money and buy her everything she wants. Back then, he used to ask me for loans all the time. Now look at him, he has turned into a phoenix from a crow. He lives in a multi-story mansion. Then he even has a private chauffeur to pick him up and drop him off. And look at you, what good are you anyway? You make a big deal out of letting me live in a subsidized apartment, and fussing over every single bit of makeup that costs just a few $100. Do you even qualify as a man anymore? Covering her tuition, living expenses, rent and daily expenditures. When I come home, I sit asleep and listen to her insults. Meanwhile, as soon as she gets home from class, all she does is watch TV and play games. Later, I noticed that Su Yao often came home carrying designer bags and other luxury items, things I simply can't afford. I asked her where she'd gotten them. Could he married into a wealthy second-generation family? Had given them to her. Every time her roommate bought something new, she'd use Su Yao some of the older pieces. However, I looked it up and the bags she brought back were all the latest seasonal models, some even limited editions. She'd started frequently staying out late, making up all sorts of excuses to spend the night elsewhere. Just then, Su Yao's phone received a text message. Unable to resist, I opened it and there was a bank notification, confirming a transfer of 50 yuan. Has an urgent message from Zhao Jiangwu Jingjing. I be transferred this month as living expenses to you. I'll be in the office tomorrow afternoon, so how about coming by to discuss your recent study results? And don't forget to wear skirt and stockings, okay? My mind went completely blank in an instant. After reading through all their jet records, I finally realized that ever since undergraduate school, Zhao Jiangwu had been harboring ulterior motives, precisely what he'd arranged for her, to be directly admitted as his graduate student. Later on, Zhao Jiangwu kept showering Su Yao with the luxury items she loved and even threatened she loved him to prevent her from graduating unless she complied. After repeated threats and enticements, Su Yao finally agreed to become Zhao Jiangwu's mistress, earning 50,000 yuan a month fee, asking to be available to let his beck and call at any time. I never imagined that the girlfriend who'd once weathered life as storms with me would be kept by another man, her own mentor, no less. Filled with rage and heartbreak, I could feel my whole body trembling. I swear I'll make sure this pair of dogs pays for what they've done. Through the chat logs, I learned that when Zhao Jiangwu secretly met Su Yao, he liked to shoot videos for his own personal enjoyment. So those videos certainly weren't stored on the computer in his office. They had to be at his home. Taking advantage of a Sunday when Zhao Jiangwu was at home, I used my computer skills to hack into his home network and then pretended to be a network technician. Heading over to his place, grab what I needed, and make a quick getaway, but unfortunately, the neighborhood happened to be under lockdown just then. Faced with the UNS temptation, I couldn't resist, and I slept with his wife, so in a way, I was just getting even by using his own tactics against him. Their meeting with Xiao Jiangwu went relatively smoothly. He agreed to my conditions, but he doesn't understand why I asked him to transfer all the assets under Li Wan's name into Xiao Jiangwu's own hands. I completely deleted the copied video right in front of him, but what Xiao Jiangwu didn't know was that I'd already set up scheduled uploads on his computer. A few days later, the school administrators and relevant authorities would receive the video files sent by Xiao Jiangwu himself. After returning home, Su Yao and I had a complete and honest talk. I told her that I'd already found out about all the illicit affairs she'd been having with Xiao Jiangwu. To be honest, I still harbor a lingering fondness for her. She was so pure and adorable. I'd like to hear her say straight from her own mouth that she has finally realized her mistakes and regrets, that she still loves me, and that it was Xiao Jiangwu who drove her to do all this in the first place. Yet I didn't hear a thing. Su Yao, furious and humiliated, lashed out at me like a madwoman, accusing me of every possible fault. You said you'd slept with Xiao Jiangwu, at least you could have given me some money, afforded me the life I wanted. But sleeping with you, I don't get a damn thing out of it. All those years of my youth have been wasted on you. Zhenmo, you ain't nothing but a loser. Just look at your measly salary. What the hell can you even accomplish with that? Don't you dare talk to me day after day about some so-called love. You can't even provide for my basic needs to be completely devoted to you. Xiao Jiangwu has already promised to marry me as soon as I graduate. As for you, you low-life loser, you'd better just stay single for the rest of your life. After finishing her words, Su Yao packed up her belongings and left the house we'd been renting. Before she departed, I gave her one last message. I hope you want to regret it. She doesn't know this is my last chance for her. Too bad she doesn't appreciate it. I combined her jet logs with Xiao Jiangwu's and the transfer records into a long post. The forum exploded with discussion. Various threads flooded in, temporarily bringing the website to a standstill. However, the article had already spread widely among students at our university and even made its way onto the entire internet. Later, fed up with all the hassle, I just blocked her completely. I heard from a mutual friend that the next day when Su Yao went to school, a huge crowd had already lined up waiting to catch a glimpse of her. Her WeChat account was flooded with messages. Most were either insults or questions asking how much she charged per session. Her classmates and friends themselves from her, or even proactively cutting ties. I heard that Su Yao is nearly driven mad and has already begun the process of withdrawing from school. I wasn't happy to see that Su Yao had received the punishment she deserved. Rather, I felt more disappointment and regret. We've already met both sets of parents, and we were about to get married soon. I didn't tell her parents about this, consider it my final act of kindness toward her, hoping that she'll take better care of herself from now on. However, it isn't complete yet. I'm going to make Xiao Jiangwu pay the full price for everything he has done. I knocked on the door of a house where a middle-aged woman and her daughter lived. Sister Zhang, how is everything going over there? Got it. I am okay too. Great. I wish I could send this beast straight to hell right now. Zhang Din is Xiao Jiangwu's ex-wife. When their daughter, Zhao Yu, was in middle school, Zhang Din discovered that her husband had been having an affair with a female student from their daughter's school who studied dance yuan. Not only did Yuan persuade Xiao Jiangwu to translate into her own name, but she also threatened Zhang Din's safety by using Xiao Yu as leverage, forcing Zhang Din to leave with nothing. Left with no other choice, Xiao Jiangwu has been raising their daughter all by herself ever since. Xiao Yu is a new intern who just joined our company and has been assigned to our team. She is incredibly talented and works extremely hard. As her team leader, I've given her a lot of support, and I even treat her like my own younger sister. The period right after I found out my girlfriend was being supported by another man was a really tough time for me. Xiao Yu noticed how I was feeling, so she took the initiative to reach out and chat with me, offering me her support and understanding. I confided in her about my girlfriend, and she, in turn, told me how her beastly father had abandoned her and her mother years ago. However, as it so happens, Xiao Yu's biological father turns out Jiangwu the very man who is supporting my girlfriend. Afterward, I met Xiao Yu's mother, Zhang Dian. Zhao Jiangwu must pay the price for his actions. First, I'll figure out a way to get hold of the videos filmed by Xiao Jiangwu. They'll cost him his job, but they want to deal a fatal blow to his career. Jiang Dan told me that she'd inadvertently discovered years ago that Xiao Jiangwo had been embezzling research funds for many years, greasing palms both up and down the chain, and engaging in bribery and corruption. Just to be safe, she'd hidden all those receipts, Haimanslut's bank books, and cash at her elderly, illiterate mother's home in the countryside. Although the two have divorced, Xiao Yu has an especially close relationship with her grandmother, spending more time visiting her each year than she does with Xiao Jiangwo. So, Xiao Yu's ask was to obtain evidence of his father's guilt from grandma. Everything is ready, all that's missing is the east wind. We came together to the relevant department that accepts the report. Xiao Yu, after all, he is your biological father. If we just hand over these things now, he'll be completely disgraced and there is a good chance he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. You still have time to regret it, I said to Xiao Yu. I don't regret it, Xiao Yu said with a firm look in her eyes. He never once showed any remorse for abandoning both me and Mom back then. If anyone is to blame, it is him himself. It'll never fail to arrive. On the day Xiao Jiangwo was on trial, I sat in the gallery with Xiao Yu and her mother seated beside me. Xiao Wu was in the defendant's dock. His hands cuffed, his hair had visibly turned gray, his lips were deathly pale, and his gaze was unfocused. As he listened to the judge's verdict, his whole body began to tremble, due to the enormous amount of embezzlement involved. Xiao Jiangwo was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced, in the first instance to 15 years imprisonment, with all illegally obtained was confiscated and the fine imposed. As far as I know, all property under Xiao Jiangwo's name will be confiscated. All his real estate and vehicles will be forcibly auctioned off. Then he'll also have to pay a fine of several million yuan afterward. Seeing Yu Yuan lying on the ground, crying so hard she was nearly fainting, Xiao Jiangwo should understand now why I'd insisted that he leave Yuan with not a single penny. It was all Shinan's idea. Now Yuan not only has absolutely no money and nowhere to live, but she is also stuck having to pay off Xiao Jiangwo's millions in fine. Women can be the most ruthless of all. To be honest, I feel a bit sorry for Yuan's current situation. After all, we've been husband and wife for 14 days, and at the end of the day, she was also victimized by Xiao Jiangwo, even though she did have her own share of fault as well. By the way, when we were investigating Xiao Jiangwo, we also discovered that he'd been colluding with criminal underworld forces, to round up a bunch of gangsters, including some of the guys who beat me up at the hotel that day. I heard they were even accused of murder, so I doubt they'll get off lightly. Things can finally come to a close. The bad guy has received the punishment he deserved. And as for me, I haven't gained much actually. I've even lost a relationship that lasted several years. Still, I am looking forward to my new life. Yuan sent me a long message and then blocked me. I hate Changdan. I hate the whole world, but I don't hate you at all. If I were her, I'd definitely spend my life happily with you. How I finally understand that true happiness isn't about living in a big villa, or being in a big villa, or being a rich lady. It is about spending an ordinary, peaceful life with someone you truly love. I'll never forget those 14 days. But I hope you can forget me, because I know I no longer deserve a place in your memory. Not only was she unable to continue her graduate studies, but even her undergraduate degree was revoked because of academic misconduct involving Xiao Jiangwo. She hoped I could remember our past friendship and reconcile with her. She said she'd soon find it impossible to keep living here. She was practically on the verge of having to sell herself. And I replied, was you've sold things before, haven't you? After that, I also got a new girlfriend. Yes, it was Xiao Yu. She took me back to the countryside to visit her grandmother. Although grandma hadn't been to school for very long, she was remarkably sensible and level-headed. When she learned about all the terrible things her son had done, she didn't even think about calling for him to be arrested. She blamed herself for not having raised him properly. Before long married Xiao Yu, only then did I realize that this old lady was actually a mischievous little sprite. Truly, having such a lovely wife at home makes it hard to resist indulging in the pleasures of life. Chen Mo, just be honest with me. During the time you were isolated from Yuan, did anything happen between the two of you? I'd rather die than tell the truth.